booed at home as they were rocked by the Grizzlies, 140-114. Raptors 121, Nets 102. Celtics have won 8 of 9. They knocked off the Bulls 111-104. Trae Young at 41. The Hawks got by the Pacers 116-111. Wizards surprised the Nuggets 128-114. The Hornets beat the Mavs in Dallas 123-120 in OT despite another triple-double from Luka Doncic. Terry Rozier had 29. Pistons 111, Warriors 104. Bucks won their 5th straight, defeating the Spurs 127-118, and the Pelicans snuck by the Kings 117-115. College hoops, number 1 Gonzaga found a way past Pepperdine 75-70. Kansas over West Virginia 60-53. Virginia, Duke, Auburn, and Kentucky also easy winners. I'm Darwin Zook.
You can find us any time of the day or night at CBSSportsRadio.com.
Good morning and welcome to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas, the soon-to-be home of your Raiders. Welcome, Raider Nation. I'm Scott Gulbransen, joined as always by my co-hosts Kelly Kriner and Chaz Osborne. The day after the playoffs begin in the NFL, of course, the Raiders not in the playoffs again this year, but we'll talk about why that is. We'll talk a little bit about everything today. In fact, we were going to do a round table, if you will, with not only Chaz and Kelly and myself, but also Moe Moton, our senior NFL columnist at silverandblacktoday.com, will join us as well. We'll get him here on the line in just a second. So, guys, here we are. We're going to talk a lot about the season today and what happened, right, and why it happened, and kind of give our view. I know everybody's got opinions. But good morning, Chaz.
Hey, morning, Raider Nation.
You ready? You ready to kind of put your grade and look on the season to tell
we're
folks
supposed to
how
give
it went?
Grades?
Not grades,
okay.
But you know what I'm saying.
Let's put a bow on that season. And actually, it wasn't a bad season. I was really happy with all the production and all the positive things that came out of it. So going forward, future's looking bright.
Kelly Kriner, how about you, man? You ready to get this started?
I am. It just doesn't seem like we should have the post-mortem already.
Yeah, I know. It went by so quick.
Yeah.
But we don't know what is in store for the show, but we're going to do that. And also we're going to bring on Moe Moton, and we'll do that now because Mo's going to join us by phone. He's going to be with us for quite a while today. We got him to devote some of his time, his busy schedule with the playoffs and all that. So we go out now on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line, and we'll get him here in a second. But guys, so to me, I'm looking at this season, and Chaz, I know you said successful season, and I think that's true in many ways. You learned a lot about your team. You learned a lot about your rookie class, which I think is very important, and so that's something we'll talk about. And now we will go out on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line and bring in our good friend Moe Moton. Mo, how you doing this morning, buddy?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty well.
Nice start to the playoffs. Did you have some fun watching the games yesterday?
Just saw a lot of pretty good QB play. A lot of good team play. Everyone's asking about what's going to happen with Brady. A lot of Raider fans wondering if Brady wanted to come to Las Vegas, would he be a good fit? And I understand he's got all the rings, got all the accolades, but I would probably say no to Brady.
Okay, I agree with that.
That's amazing, though, isn't it? You're looking at a guy with 6 rings and all that, and he's like, nah, we'll pass.
Yeah, but he's been in the league for 20 years. You're looking at an old guy with 6 rings.
I know, but it's just weird to say that. Like, anytime, anywhere, you can get a Super Bowl, MVP, first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, yeah, bring it on. But
well, you could sign Joe Montana tomorrow. Does that mean you want?
Yeah, no.
That's right. All right, so here we go. We're going to bring this up. I want to start with kind of looking at the season, guys, and we'll start in kind of just at a 50,000-foot level here. Okay, coming off 2018, they're 4-12. A lot of roster changes between 18 and 19. The roster got much younger. In 2018, average age was 27.4 years, one of the oldest rosters in the NFL. By 19, that went down to 25.6, so they were the ninth youngest roster as well. You add 12 rookies, you add free agents in Antonio Brown, which we'll get to in a minute, and Richie Incognito. Now, if you look at that and all the roster changes you saw, not every move obviously worked out, but when you're looking at this situation and you looked at what was going to change between 18 and 19, there were so many changes that needed to happen. And did they address, or at least try to address, Kelly, all of those changes, or what did they maybe miss in the preseason? And I'm not talking about like an Antonio Brown. They tried to address wide receiver. They tried to address cornerback. Is there something they missed?
Well, you have to look at the whole Antonio Brown thing. They were going to try to build this around that offense. And the second that kind of went out the window, it was too late to address a lot of other stuff. So it's like that one domino falling kind of just put everything else, on the back burner. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, okay, now that we don't have all this salary cap money, we don't have this stuff set away for Brown, but you can't go and spend it on, say, a linebacker or something else, because pretty much anybody worth having's already been taken.
Right. Oh, I mean, there was a lot of questions going into the season. Is the pass rush going to be improved? Will the Raiders' youth be reliable? Can the offensive line protect Carr? And like you said, who's going to fill that void left by Antonio Brown? Did they answer a lot of questions? I don't know. The season, the whole offensive line was a question. Tom Cable was a lightning rod. I know Kelly talked about it a lot. Mo, you were talking about it. And, was Colton Miller a first-round bust? Will Trent Brown live up to that contract? Why are they taking a risk with Incognito? But the offensive line was probably the strongest and most consistent part of the team all season, I think.
Yeah, it's funny because Mo had said if we told you at the beginning of the season Tom Cable is going to be the last thing you need to worry about on this team, nobody would have believed it.
Mo, what about you? When you look at what they tried to do, and we're going to address the Brown situation separately because I think it deserves some time on its own. But when you look at what they tried to do in the offseason to address the needs they had after going 4-12, where did they miss maybe, or where do you think they did really well in addressing those concerns?
I think where they missed was linebacker. I know they signed Vontaze Burfict, but if you look at his track record, I believe he hasn't played a full season since, I believe, 2013. Now, we found out that he was on thin ice with the league. If he got a penalty or with an infraction, he was, be suspended. So I think they should have done more with the linebacker position, especially in today's league when you have spread out offenses. You got to defend the middle of the field. You're in a division now with Hunter Henry, Travis Kelce, and then the Broncos brought in Noah Fant, and he blossomed toward the end of the season. So when you're in a division with pass-catching tight ends, you need to be able to cover the field. And I know people say, well, they add more safeties. But my thing is, with Vontaze Burfict there, again, not playing a full season in so long, I feel like they needed more reinforcements there. Tahir Whitehead, I understand, great guy off the field, but he's not a cover linebacker. He's better on the first two downs defending the run. And Nicholas Morrow is pretty much unproven. So I think that's a spot that they seem to usually miss. And I think that's a spot they need to really address going forward. Where I think they tried to do well, and I know we're going to address Antonio Brown separately, was they tried to bolster the wide receiver position so we can kind of see what Derek Carr can be with a full group. Unfortunately, Gruden and his moves at wide receiver just don't seem to pan out. I know they brought in Zay Jones during the season. They brought in Trevor Davis. Those guys pretty much negligible. Didn't do pretty much anything. Tyrell Williams, plantar fasciitis. Hunter Renfrow was probably a bright spot at the position, but again, they tried to do it. It just didn't pan out there at wide receiver.
No, that's absolutely true. Terrell Williams with the foot injury, and I think he was one of the disappointments. But if I look at it and I say, okay, what were some of the big questions? And let's go from this perspective. Going into 2019, you had Gruden-Mayock, that relationship. How was that going to work? When Mayock was hired, we heard a lot about, well, he's just going to be a figurehead, and it's John Gruden who's the GM here, and he's going to just have to do what he has to do. But it seems like they had a good relationship. They weren't on the same page with the Antonio Brown situation. At least that's what we're hearing now. But that was one of the big question mark, guys, was how are they going to be able to get along? How is that new team of those two, a GM and a coach who serves basically as a GM as well, how was that going to pan out? And I think overall, from what we know, now we might not know things happening inside the building, but from what we know, I think that worked out pretty good.
Yeah. I thought Mayock was just brought in to nail the draft first and foremost, and then he can learn the rest of the job on the fly, right? I like the way he flexed his GM muscles in training camp with the Antonio Brown statement to the press, and I really think now he compliments Gruden in that front office, that aspect of the relationship. They seem like they play off each other really well now. So again, this next draft is going to be huge, and I think Mayock's going to deliver again.
Yeah, you say that he flexed his muscle with the Antonio Brown, what he said, but it was obvious that Gruden was going to keep Antonio Brown if he possibly could.
Oh, of course. I mean, you want a top elite wide receiver. Of course, you want to try and keep him.
Well, no, most other teams would have jettisoned him earlier, but Gruden was like he didn't care what Mayock thought or what Mayock wanted on that situation. Gruden was going to try to keep him.
Right, well, because he saw the future. He saw what Antonio Brown could bring to that offense, and the wide receiver was really lacking. One of the areas that the Raiders were lacking in, and I think you start daydreaming a little bit more of what could possibly be. And you kind of lose focus of what's really happening.
Yeah, well, a guy that tears up your locker room and gets kicked off of 2 teams in 1 year,
including the Patriots, who badly needed a wide receiver. And to me, that is, and we're going to talk about John Gruden and the second hour and the coaching and kind of evaluate from our perspective how that went. But clearly, his biggest and most glaring mistake this year was Antonio Brown. By what happened and the fact that they built the whole offense around him. Speaking of the offense 24th in points this year, 19.6 points a game, 11th in yards, so 363 a game, 9th in passing yards at 245th as well. That offense, and we'll get into details on that as well, but guys, off the top, the defense, there's no question the defense, Mo, didn't play up to standard and was not an asset to this team most of the time. The last 3 games, you could argue it was. But in the minute we have before the break, that offense overall just didn't pan out, and most of that was because of the wide receiver position, was it not?
Absolutely, because of the wide receiver position. They were. I know people want to blame Carr for everything, but in certain games, and I can point to the Jets game specifically, there were drops. On the second half of the season, throughout the second half of the season, there were a lot of drops, and I think the Raiders sorely missed Hunter Renfrow. Yes, Kelly, they did. They sorely missed Hunter Renfrow, and they just didn't have a lot of qualified pass catchers out there outside of Darren Waller. So when teams adjusted to Waller, it's kind of like, what did they have behind that? And they didn't have much.
No, they didn't. And guys, I mean, when we look at what they need to do there. Luckily, the draft, I mean, I think they're going to be able to, with one of those first-round draft picks, address the wide receiver position. And actually, if better players are available in other positions, they could defer to the second and maybe even top of the third round for a receiver that's going to be dang good, too, because the class is so deep.
Well, they can't defer to the second. They don't have a second.
But they could trade up.
That's the kicker in this year. And that's the whole Mac trade. I wasn't a big fan of it. The fact that you don't have a second-round pick is that this year just, I mean, that's just terrible. Because that second-round pick would have been huge for this team this year.
Yeah, it hurts you for sure. All right, we're going to step aside. Again, we're talking with the team here, along with Moe Moton on the phone with us for our postseason review panel, whatever you want to call it, round table, although our table's not round. But we're doing that. We're going through it all, and you're with us here on the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. I'm not hearing any. There we go. Yeah. Hey, sorry. All right, welcome back, guys. We are here with our panel. Of course, my co-hosts in studio, as always, Kelly Kriner and Chaz Osborne. And joining us on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line is our good friend Moe Moton. And we are evaluating, looking at, just chatting about all things Raiders 2019, what worked, what didn't work, and trying to give sort of a balanced look at how that all had went down this year, because some things worked, some things did not work. When you finish under 500, it doesn't mean everything worked for you, right? It doesn't mean there wasn't improvement. It doesn't mean you don't have things to do to make yourself better, but certainly not everything went according probably to plan. What we want to do now is talk about, guys, the free agent class that came in, because the Raiders really looked to free agents to shore up some positions of need in the offseason. They started, of course, with Antonio Brown, trading a 3rd and a 5th round pick. They went out and they acquired Vontaze Burfict. They acquired LaMarcus Joyner, Darren Waller, Terrell Williams, Trent Brown, Jonathan Hankins, Nevin Lawson, and Eric Harris, just to name. There's a couple more, but I'm going to focus on those. And let's first start with Antonio Brown. Now that we are gonna talk a little bit more about that specifically, I want to address it because, to me, this really set a course for this team that made it difficult, I think, overall for them to really have a shot at the offense, at improving the offense, right, guys? Because what we heard all year was that they're going to build, or they were going to build, this offense around Antonio Brown. But then he was gone before the season started, so there goes your plan, and there goes your opportunity to improve at wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just, like I said, not just wide receivers. Like I said, the whole offense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Waller was a pleasant surprise, and we're going to talk about that. But, you're going in day one. We've got our guy. We brought in Ty to be a 2, which he's a great 2. The whole Brown, and not only that, but just the whole Brown fiasco. It just tears up the locker room, But you've also got all these guys having to answer all these questions, and it's just a distraction you didn't need.
Yeah. I think you could have made the argument that, you could have won the Houston game, maybe the Jacksonville game, if Antonio Brown is there. You can also make the argument that you've been a distraction somewhere along the line and cost the Raiders a couple of games. So it's just one of those things, like, well, we talked about it extensively before the season when it happened. Is he going to be a distraction? Is he worth, what we're paying for him? And, ultimately we saw that it just
it wasn't.
Went down the tubes.
Well, he's going to be a distraction. It's just, is the distraction worth it?
Correct.
He's been a distraction. First few years in Pittsburgh, he was fine because nobody knew who he was.
Right. Well, and the distraction this time, Moe Moton, who joins us on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line from Brooklyn, New York. Moe, was it smart for the Raiders to build their offense around this one guy, knowing of his volatility?
I wouldn't call it smart. I understand it because he going into the season, many, including myself, would say he's one of the top 2 or 3 wide receivers in the league. Some people say he was the best wide receiver in the league. So I totally get it. But at the same time, if this guy could implode at any given time, you might want to have a pretty good plan B. And the Raiders really didn't have a plan B after Terrell Williams got hurt. I'm sure they weren't expecting Hunter Renfrow to blossom the way he did. So when you're killing an offense around Antonio Brown, you are risking a lot for the season, and it blew up in the Raiders' face. I get the move. You trade a 3rd and a 5th rounder for a top wide receiver. I understand it. I get why they would do it. It's just that the planning afterward, just wasn't foolproof, and you saw it blew up, and he wound up not being in the league at the end of the year, which is something we all probably didn't see happening that quickly, but it happened.
No, and to me as well, the question is, guys, if Antonio Brown is there, is this offense more vertical? Because you look at the issues and still the questions you have at quarterback. Would Antonio Brown have solved all that? I don't know, because we never got to see it, right? I guess it's the impossible question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, with AB, it's the offense doesn't have to so much be vertical because he's so good after the catch. you could still be doing all the check downs and things like that. It's just your yards after catch is going to go up, which means your bigger plays are going up. So you don't necessarily have to just have him run nines or deep posts. Just get the ball in his hand, and you've got a chance to have a big play at all times.
Right. Not only that, though, he does open it up for everybody else on the field there. It would have take a lot of pressure off a lot of other people.
Yeah, and to me, one of the other signings, I think the other signing, Mo, I'm going to get your reaction to this first, that was polarizing amongst Raider Nation, amongst fans and even observers, was, of course, Vontaze Burfict at linebacker. They badly needed linebackers. They went out and they got this guy. Of course, he was close to Paul Gunther because they had been together in Cincinnati. And then, of course, he has that penalty, and it gets him suspended for the rest of the year. Was that just as risky as the Antonio Brown acquisition, Mo, or do you think that was a more calculated risk?
It is more risky when you have Tahir Whitehead as your best linebacker on the roster. And again, I go back to this. You have to have cover guys. This isn't 1975 where you have big guys just, banging heads with offensive linemen trying to stop the run. Your linebackers have to be good in space. And Vontaze Burfict was okay in that aspect. He wasn't great. He was okay. But when you have Nicholas Morrow who's unproven, you have Tahir Whitehead who's a two-down linebacker, Vontaze Burfict as your star acquisition at the position is very risky, and that blew up in the Raiders' face. So you have one on the offensive side of the ball, one on the defensive side of the ball, both acquisitions just kind of blowing up. People will quibble about, he shouldn't have been suspended for the year, but if you look at his track record, he had been warned plenty of times. I agree it may have been harsh, but you have to understand that long track record, previous history, he's going to get nailed, and that's what happened.
Well, yeah, and to me, the other free agent that people are a little bit mixed on, and I think it's fair on one side, but not fair on the other because he played out of position the whole year, and that, of course, was LaMarcus Joyner. He was a signing people got really excited about because they were looking at shoring up that secondary, and I'll start with you on this one, Kelly. He didn't play in position, his natural position, where he's best. How much of that was to blame for maybe at times his play not being what people thought it would be?
Well, anytime you play somebody out of position, they're not going to play well. It just blows me away that they continue to keep trying to stick the square peg in the round hole. It's like, and that's a big issue I have with that signing. It's like, I liked the signing when I first heard it, and then they're like, well, they're going to play him at slot corner, and I'm like, why?
Right.
You can go out and get an actual slot corner and play him at slot corner instead of taking a safety and trying to squeeze him in there. And the fact that they just keep beating their head against the wall and trying to make this work kind of worries me a little bit because it's not like they're all just going to snap out and be like, you know what, maybe we should play this guy where he actually plays well.
Right. Well, he's not the biggest safety either, so maybe I'm not sure what they were thinking on that one either. Sometimes when you sign a guy to a big contract like that, they kind of ease up a little bit, and I feel like he didn't bring his full potential this season. He could have brought a lot more, even though they were mixing him, moving him around where he wasn't comfortable, and they're trying new things. That's one of the things you look at in the season. You can't piece the whole thing together with just stats, right? You try to go back and you watch what combinations worked, better with people in certain situations. Maybe did Crosby get more pressure on the quarterback when Mayo was in there as opposed to Cleveland Ferrell? Or Kelly brought up that great point about Derek Carr missing those 3 games because Renfrow was out, his safety blanket there. So there's kind of things that coaches and scouts will look at in the offseason and use that information going forward, like what works, what didn't work. And obviously the LaMarcus Joyner thing, playing out of position didn't really work.
Now, Mo, I'll get your comments on this too because I know you've had a lot to say about it. But with LaMarcus Joyner, are you hopeful? Because we've been hearing that it looks like the Raiders are actually going to play him at his natural position. Do you think he has a rebound year after this year?
Yeah, 2 things. First of all, you guys are being way too easy on the coaching staff. This is a classic case of I know more than you. I know what I'm doing. Ego getting in the way. The Raiders started off using Joyner at nickel. It didn't work, and they said, you know what? We're going to double down. We're not going to admit we were wrong. We're going to double down on this. We're going to keep him there. Now, to your point, I will say that there is hope for the future. Gunther, I believe, did say that after concentrating Joyner at nickel, that they would try to move him to safety next year if need be. The other thing here is Gruden just blatantly lied to the public. I remember when he was asked about moving Joyner to safety, he said, "Well, we don't have another guy to break in at nickel." as if Nevin Lawson hadn't played nickel for primarily his entire career. I know Nevin Lawson isn't the greatest nickel in the world, but he is an experienced nickel. He could play in the slot. He could have moved Joyner. And that's my point, is that this coaching staff used excuses, every excuse in the book, to keep Joyner at nickel, and it was the wrong decision. But I think he could have a bounce-back year if they moved him to safety.
Yeah, and it was, and I think that, with Coach Gruden, as you know, what he says doesn't mean always what he does. That's why when people live and die what he says in a press conference, whether it be good or bad, I always tell people take it with a grain of salt, because Coach Gruden has a tendency to just parrot what he wants to at that time and not necessarily hit on exactly the facts on what people want to hear. All right, we are at the bottom of the hour. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Raiders' impressive rookie class. You're listening to the Silver and Black Today panel on the 2019 season here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio. We are back with Silver and Black Today. We are doing our postseason breakdown here with Chaz Osborne, Kelly Kriner, and joining us via the attorney Michael Tryon, the Newsmaker line, is Moe Moton. Okay, guys, we're going to run into now a discussion on the rookie class for the Raiders. One of the really big positives of the season, of course, it starts with Josh Jacobs, 242 carries, 1,150 yards, 7 touchdowns, averaged 4.8 yards per carry, and that was just in 13 games. And Josh Jacobs really, I think, set the standard this year for the Raiders and for that team. And actually, as a young player, Kelly, also really jumped out in the locker room and was a leader right to begin with.
Yeah, I was surprised that he was because Derek Carr, that's really not his personality. So you need somebody in there. And I was surprised it was Jacobs. And from the get-go, he just kind of, especially with like Hard Knocks, like he was purposefully avoiding Hard Knocks.
Mm-hmm.
So when he started out kind of as that mouthpiece, and especially towards the end of the season, he starts calling out teammates and everything. You just don't really expect to see that from a rookie.
Right.
Yeah, well, and you saw these exit interviews as well. All these rookies talked about was how they're looking forward to, working on the things that they need to do in the offseason to get better next year. You hear all of them. They're all talking with a lot of confidence. Cleveland Ferrell's saying, you won't even recognize me next year because I'm going to work so hard in the summer. I'm going to come back that much stronger, that much better. And they all just kind of have that leadership quality that you're talking about with Jacobs. And it's really impressive going forward. It's going to be a nice offseason, and looking forward to next season already.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just hate when you hear players say stuff like that. It's like, so you didn't do that last season? I mean, it's like,
right.
You're just starting that now? You're going to work really hard now?
Well,
like, we get it. You're doing that every summer. You don't have to tell us this.
Right. But he, getting sick in the middle of the season, losing 10 pounds, playing through that was a tough Ferrell went through a lot this season. Obviously criticized for being that high of a pick. So I can see his motivation.
Yeah. And Mo, what about you Josh Jacobs, I think everybody knew, we talked about it on our draft show when we did our draft show during the draft about how he was the best back. It wasn't a deep class, but he was the best back. So you weren't surprised that the Raiders took him when they did. But are you surprised at how well he did from the get-go?
I'm surprised about how well he did from the get-go, simply because Gruden is known for diluting his running back carries. He'll spread it around. So he doesn't really go, unless you talk about Cadillac Williams, doesn't usually go with a workhorse back. But I guess Josh Jacobs was just that good that you just had to feed him the ball, and I believe Gruden said that during his press conferences, that if he's rolling, you got to feed him. One point I will make about this class and Josh Jacobs' leadership skills, even though we didn't expect it from Josh Jacobs, Mike Mayock made it a point to draft character guys in the early rounds, and a lot of people say, "Oh, that's not how you do it. You need production over character," and I agree to an extent. You need both, but to have a guy like Josh Jacobs in the locker room as a rookie, barking down his teammates is something that they absolutely need, because again, that's not Derek Carr's style.
Right, and you look at this whole class, of course, Max Crosby, I think the other big story of the year, really the surprise of the year. I was completely wrong on him. I keep admitting it because I was just completely wrong on him. 10 sacks, 4 fumbles, forced fumbles this year as well. You talked about Cleveland Ferrell, 4.5 sacks, 24 tackles, 14 assists as well. Trayvon Mullen, who played well, was targeted off and did really well most of the time. And then, of course, Hunter Renfrow, 49 receptions, 605 yards, 4 touchdowns. And he missed a couple games with that injury and collapsed lung as well. So when you look at this overall, this class, and I know some people seem disappointed with Ferrell, and I know he took longer to kind of make some progress, but I sort of look at him a little bit like we looked at maybe Miller last year, right? Which is you expect him to make a big jump next year. But I thought the last 3 games, Ferrell really did make a jump and started to show. And then the Raiders came out and like you said, Mo, I'll be critical of the coaches here. They were asking him to do much. They were playing him inside, not playing him outside, and not really giving him an opportunity to stick at a position and go at what he knows how to do best.
This is the other thing that makes me pull what's left of the hair I have on my head out. Is you draft Cleveland Ferrell, number 4 overall, right? You need a pass
because you need a pass rush, right?
You need a defensive end to get to the quarterback. But no, we'll do a whole bunch of other things. We'll move him inside. We'll have him play a run. We'll have him do this. We'll have him do that. You need a pass rusher. You drafted him 4th overall. Have him rush the passer from the beginning. Have him. I understand the Raiders want a complete defensive end. I totally get it. But you drafted him to fill a void at that spot in the draft. Have him play the position and fulfill his main responsibility. And I think if they do that next year, he will have a jump. I never saw Cleveland Ferrell as a 10, 11 sack guy, but he can get you 8 or 9 a year, and I think he's capable.
Right, but Kelly, I think you hit on this from the very beginning when the season started, and people were already talking about Ferrell not maybe working out, which I think is wrong. But nonetheless, you said, hey, if he was drafted later in the first round, then it probably wouldn't be as an issue. But when you go number 4, when you're up there with Joey Bosa and you're up there with Allen, these guys, there's just more expectations, right?
Yeah, nobody wants to see their team draft a run-stopping, edge-setting defensive end with the 4th pick in the draft because like I said, you want that Josh Allen, you want that Bosa. I mean, even before the wrist injury, Brian Burns out of Carolina was just like he's just popping on film. That's what the fans want because you took somebody so high. You want to swing for the fence with a 4th round pick, and it's like the article I wrote. It's like their first round they hit 3 doubles. You win a lot of games by hitting 3 doubles, but you don't want to hit a double with the 4th pick in the draft. I've said from day one he's an 8 to 10 sack guy a year. That's what he's going to be, and you're just going to have to be okay with that. And towards the end of the year, you kind of saw that to where he started coming on to where 8 to 10 sacks a year, good against the run, setting that edge. That's what you want out of Furl.
And is that fair, Chaz? The expectation of a guy that goes number 4 versus a guy that goes 15 or 20.
Yeah, no, we see it every year. It's not fair because to Mo's point about the coaches and what they're doing, moving LaMarcus Joyner out of position. It's a rebuild season. So maybe they're trying different things with Cleveland Furl just to see where guys fit in and in their comfort zone and out of their comfort zone. And it's unfair just to judge somebody off of their first season. It's a long process. Guys, in the NBA, we used to talk about it would take 4 or 5 years to find out what a guy really is and coming into the league. And you can't just judge a guy off of his first season.
No, and I was encouraged by what he was able to do at the end of the season.
Yeah, as long as you're seeing that progress, and
right.
We did see major progress towards the end there.
Right, and Max Crosby, again, guys, of course, surprised everybody, and the Raiders found a guy who got double-digit sacks, and their pass rush improved. It's still not where it needs to be. It's still at the bottom
2018,
level.
How many sacks? 13? Yeah. So 32 this season? Is that what it was?
Correct.
Max Crosby having 10, that's great. And then the offensive line, too. Last season, Carr was sacked 52 times. And they only gave up 29 this season, so that's there's been improvements across the board there.
Right. On the pass rush, they go from being last in the league in 2018, like you said, Chaz, with 13, to 24th in the league with 32. So still not great, but trending in the right direction.
But they ended up 8th in the league, only giving up 98 yards a game rushing.
Right.
And that's the first time they've held teams under 100 yards rushing since I can remember. 20 years probably since the first Gruden stint.
Yeah, and Mo, when you look at this draft class, this rookie class, obviously Josh Jacobs and Max Crosby, and then Furl Mullen, who out of these guys do you expect and you want to see the biggest jump from year 1 to year 2?
It's got to be Furl, of course. Again, if they have him do what he should be doing as a defensive end, as the number 4 overall pick, he should see a major jump and come close to 10 sacks and kind of come close to what Crosby did this year. But I will throw in a dark horse in there, Trayvon Mullen.
Mm-hmm.
I read a piece from Vic Tafel who said that they're going to have him eventually shadow number 1 wide receivers next season. So that's something to look forward to. And if he's able to do that and excel, I think he could be one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Kind of what I guess people thought Garon Conley would be at the beginning of his career after he had his shin injury. People were kind of high on Garon Conley, and he kind of fizzled out. I think Trayvon Mullen should be able to burst through that ceiling and be a pretty good number 1 cornerback for that defense.
Yeah, again, you're listening to Moe Moton, Chaz Osborne, Kelly Kriner, and Scott Gulbransen here on the Silver and Black today as we talk about the Raiders 2019, focusing this time on the rookies. And let's close with Hunter Renfrow, because I hear a lot of Raider fans out there, oh, he's the next Julian Edelman. It's like, okay, he had a good season, and I know, Mo, you keep telling me he's going to have a gold jacket and be in the Hall of Fame. But when you look at Hunter Renfrow, I'm a little worried that people are having a higher expectation because of what he was able to do, or is that expectation worthy? I mean, should he have that high expectation?
You can't spell Hunter Renfrow without H-O-F.
Oh, my gosh. Well, Mo, what do you think, man? I mean, I know you're a fan of his play, but do you think that the fans' expectations are getting a little out of whack there, or do you think it's deserving?
I think it's a little out of whack if the Raiders decide to bring in another wide receiver ahead of him. Because you got to remember, Terrell Williams is still there, and based on what Gruden said at his exit interview, Terrell Williams will be back next season. And you got to understand that they're going to bring in a number 1 type wide receiver probably, and maybe another wide receiver. So he's not going to have the same amount of targets, I believe, as he had this year with a depleted core, with a depleted unit. So his numbers may drop. But I always said he was a 50-catch, 500-yard type of guy. 1 catch below that this year, 49 catches for 605. But again, I think this is what he is. He's going to be a slot receiver. He's going to move the chains. He's reliable on crucial downs, but I wouldn't go and say, oh, he could be a 1,000-yard receiver or 800-yard receiver. I think that's a product. What he did this year is a product of just not having guys around the position. But when the Raiders start to add talent there, he's going to see less targets. He has temporary expectations. He's going to be pretty solid, but let's pump the brakes.
Yeah, let's not compare him to a Super Bowl MVP just yet. All right, guys, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we're going to talk about the offense. Offensive woes in 2019. You're listening to the year-end review of the Raiders' 2019 season here on CBS Sports Radio. Don't go anywhere.
CBS Sports Radio, 1140.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas. We are joined on the attorney Michael Troiano line by our senior NFL columnist at silverandblacktoday.com. That is Moe Moton. Also, Kelly Kriner, Chaz Osborne, as usual, in the studio with me, Scott Gulbransen. All right, guys, let's jump into the offense here. Now, 11th total offense, 24th in scoring, though, which to me is more significant and huge. You look at their 24th ranking in points scored with 313. That's 7 more than the Miami Dolphins, if you want to put it in perspective. Third quarter scoring, we heard this all year round, right? Especially the second half of the season. Ranked last in the league, 1.7 average on the season scoring in the third quarter, 2.3 in the last 3 games of the season when you had a playoff spot on the line, and 0.4 average at home. So they were actually worse at home in the third quarter than on the road. Ranked 20th in the fourth quarter, and in the second half, they ranked 31st in points scored, averaging 7.2 over the entire second half. All right, let's jump in on this because everyone wants to blame one person, and that's Derek Carr. he does play a part in it, and we'll get to that in a second. But, Mo, I'm going to start with you on this because you said we were being too easy on the coaching staff earlier when it came to the defense. When you look at what offensive problems the Raiders had this year, obviously the running game went very well because you had Josh Jacobs there. You had two tight ends who did very well. Darren Waller, of course, number one. Foster Moreau, before the knee injury, did exceptional as well. How much do we look at the offense and say, hey, Coach Gruden, you have to adjust, you have to adapt, you have to change?
Yeah, we have to look at Coach John Gruden. And I think people I had a reply. Someone said, well, people aren't really hammering on Gruden because we know he's going to be here. That doesn't excuse him, though. I mean, when you look at it, you broke it down between the first half scoring and the second half scoring, 10th versus 31st. Same players on the field, same personnel. What changes between the first and the second half? People will say, well, the Raiders didn't have wide receivers. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. It's Carr's fault. Same players on the field between the first and the second half, yet you have a drop-off in the second half. That's coaching. Mm-hmm. That tells me that Gruden has a problem adjusting. That tells me that the opposing team, I don't want to say knows, but can predict what the Raiders are going to do in the second half because they don't adjust to anything. They say, well, we're going to counter what the Raiders did, and then Gruden doesn't have a counterpunch.
Well, and Mo, we heard that from Kansas City, right? They said they knew what was coming, mm-hmm. and that wasn't just about Derek Carr. He made the Honey Badger made that comment about Derek Carr, but guys, that was the entire offense, right? They had a feeling that they weren't going to make adjustment after halftime, and that's when the Chiefs blew it open.
Yeah, well, I agree with Mo there. It's definitely Gruden's conservative play calling has been the biggest concern for me. It started the first game against the Broncos after Denver kicked a field goal to make the score 21-9 at the start of the fourth quarter. Dwayne Harris responded with a 72-yard kickoff return, giving the Raiders an opportunity to put the game away with a short touchdown. Instead, Gruden calls 6 run plays, and they settle for a short field goal. And it's like this conservative, same thing in 2018. The Raiders had the lead the first 3 games of the season. Conservative second half, lost all 3 games. At some point, everybody wants to blame Carr, but that marriage, they really got to start opening things up.
When you play not to lose in the NFL, you lose.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way the offenses and everything are nowadays. You have to if you have a chance to put somebody down, you got to put them down. You got to put your foot on their throat.
Absolutely.
You have to keep trying to score because the offenses are so good. 14 points in 2 minutes is not unheard of, especially in the AFC West, which Denver's offense isn't that great, but Kansas City will drop it on you. We saw, Austin Eckler and Hunter Henry just make some San Diego drives like instant scores.
Right.
So, it's like you have to score points. This whole try to eat clock and kick field goals is, that it's not 1964.
Right. As Mo said. And Mo, the other thing is they were 13th, like people towards that second half of the year when they went 1-5, people kept saying, hey, listen, they didn't, and even Gruden in the press conference, look, we didn't get the ball that much in the second half. They ranked 13th in the NFL in second half the number of second half possessions from a percentage standpoint, yet we're 31st in scoring. So to me, that was another excuse. But when you look at this, Mo, you have to ask the question, and this kind of dovetails into something we'll talk about now and also after the break at the top of the hour, which is how much of Gruden's adjustments is on him, how much of it is based on the connection between what he has from a talent and a player perspective, and that starts with quarterback, versus him just not willing to change.
I think part of it is just him not willing to change. I know he did make a comment about he wants to, throw the ball down the field, but that's just never been his MO. And until he shows something different, then how can we believe him? You just pointed out another instance where he basically, I don't want to say lied, but he's just telling half truth or false. He's just spreading false facts about, okay, we didn't have the ball out, yet you were 13th in possession. So that obviously wasn't the issue. The thing with Gruden is he's great at scripting at the beginning of games. He's just not great at adjusting after halftime, which is a problem.
It is a problem because, again, you have to be able to do that in the NFL today. It's just, the coaching in the NFL has changed. When you play somebody like, let's keep it in the division, when you're playing Andy Reid twice a season, that guy, whether you like him or not, he's amazing at making adjustments. He's been very good at it his entire career. Denver, we don't know. Vic Fangio is a good defensive coordinator, but we just don't have enough there. But other coaches in the NFL, especially the younger crop coming up, they do an amazing job of adjusting and really looking at how things are going and then tailoring their game plan after a break and after the halftime to doing that. So, Kelly, I mean, if you can't adjust, it doesn't matter if God was your quarterback. You're not going to win many games.
Well, no, but if God's your quarterback, you're probably going to score a lot. But no, I mean, it's the whole second half adjustment thing. It's like, I'm a huge college basketball fan, and Mike Krzyzewski is one of the worst in college basketball. You can't make a second half adjustment. If plan A doesn't work, there's never a plan B. But when you're Duke and you've got so much more talent than everybody, plan A is really good.
Yeah.
You know, if your plan A in the NFL is really good, everybody else is so good at making. You have to make second half adjustments.
Yeah.
You know, you can't be more talented enough for the other team to where you run the same stuff and it works every single time. So I mean, this is a big problem.
It is, and I mean, I think you look at this offense too, and we have to talk about Derek Carr and the passing game because it numbers were fine, scoring was lacking, and so I think that's a big deal. So when we come back after the top of the hour news. Sports update will do that, but just to set the table here, guys. When we look at passing, you look at Derek Carr, 25th in passing, 12th in receptions. Despite that, the team was 12th in receptions in the league with 4,100 yards. I hear a lot of people say that Derek Carr was hurt by the fact that he didn't have receivers. Okay, but the numbers, if you want to go by stats, which a lot of people who support or don't support Derek Carr like to throw out there, then I think you need to be fair and look at it from both sides and look at those numbers, Kelly, to understand a little bit about both so when one excuse comes up, it doesn't necessarily mean it's valid.
Yeah, but I mean, you can look at Carr's numbers. He's great between the 20s, but that doesn't win you football games.
Yeah.
You know, Andy Dalton, same way. Andy Dalton from 20 to 20, great quarterback. You get in the red zone, everything stops.
You brought up those numbers in the beginning of the segment about the offensive woes, and the Raiders are 23rd in the league in scoring. 24th. You know who they're tied with? They're tied with Buffalo, 19.6 points a game. Buffalo's in the playoffs. So
yeah, but Buffalo is a team that's built to win with 19 points. This Raiders team isn't.
Yeah, you don't have the defense.
Exactly my point. It's not a total complete team yet.
Yeah, no, it's clearly.
So you
not.
shouldn't be trying to win games by scoring 19 points because you're not a complete team. You should be trying to score more. You should, because you have to build your team around what you are and what you have,
right.
not what you're going to be if you're trying to win now.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. They definitely could have. They left a lot of points out there.
Yeah, there was definitely an issue with scoring there. All right, Mo, don't go anywhere, man. We're going to bring you back after the top of the hour sports update from CBS Sports Radio National. Again, you're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. When we come back, we'll talk about Derek Carr some more, and we'll also talk about the Raiders' defense, what needs to be done there to improve and give this team a chance at games and to win. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, grab.
as we dissect and discuss Tua's decision.
We've got your Raiders covered.
Knock on wood if you're with me.
It's Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio 1140. And now, here's your host, Scott Gulbransen.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas. Week number 90. That's right. Approaching our 100th show sometime before the draft or around the draft, somewhere around there. End of March. Middle of April, somewhere like that. But anyway, we are dissecting, talking about the 2019 season, what went well, what didn't. We're focused still on the offense. We started that before the break, and now we're going to go into a subject that I know is very polarizing. We're joined, of course, in studio by my partners here, and that is Kelly Kriner and Chaz Osborne, and joining us on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line for this roundtable discussion today is our senior NFL columnist at Silver and Black Today, and that, of course, is Moe Moton. Also, you can catch him on Bleacher Report, does great work there as well. All right, guys, so, and Mo, I'm going to start with you on this one. Derek Carr, okay, so we know the discussion. We know the sides, if you will. There's very few people in the middle. We try to bring some I think, middle to the polarization and talk about both sides of it. But when you look at Derek Carr, we talked about before the break that despite a lot of people using the lack of receivers, which they clearly have as an excuse, they're not that bad when you compare them to other teams. Carr, he's 8th in yards in the NFL, 4,054 yards, a great year, 16 in yards a game at 253, 19th in touchdowns, tied with Gardner Minshew at 21. And if you look at his passer rating, 100.8, which is great, versus the AFC West, 94.9, out of division 104. And then you look at his performance by half, 2,300 yards, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in the first half. And like the rest of the Raiders, struggles more in the second half, 1,700 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. What is the most fair criticism of Derek Carr, Mo, and what is the most unfair?
The most unfair criticism of Derek Carr is probably the fact that he, how can I say this, that he's a bottom tier. There are some people who, I don't want to say that people saying he's trash or anything, but they're saying, oh, he's a bottom tier quarterback. And, I've said this plenty of times. He's average. He's pretty much, I would put him in the 12 to 14 range. Mm-hmm. At his best, he could probably be, 11, 12. At his worst, he's probably somewhere 15, 16. But Derek Carr is an average, serviceable quarterback. You can win with Derek Carr. The misconception is, you have to replace him because you're not going to win. You can win with Derek Carr, but you need a supporting cast. You need an offensive line because sometimes he's reluctant to use his legs. He needs wide receivers, and he needs a run game, as we saw in his history, even with Latavius Murray, Jalen Richard, and DeAndre Washington. He plays well when he has a pretty good run game. I would say the fair criticism of him is, and Kelly pointed to this, when it's time to punch it in for a score, a touchdown, sometimes he just doesn't make the right decision, whether it's a fumble at the goal line or just throwing a terrible pick. One thing I wanted to make a point, and this goes back to the last segment, is Derek Carr if he stays, he'll be going into his 3rd year in Gruden's system. I'd want to know, and sometimes we don't know this, how much freedom does he have at the line of scrimmage? Can he change a play? And how often can he change plays at the line of scrimmage to change a bad call into a good call and score? Because if he's in his 2nd, 3rd year, he should have that freedom. He should have the knowledge within that offense to change a play and take that team in for a score. That's my main criticism of him right now.
Well, and the red zone issue, if you look at Derek Carr on the season, 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions when they're 19 to 1 yards away. So basically in the red zone, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Out of his 21 touchdowns, clearly 5 of those came in the red zone. Also interesting, when the Raiders are behind between 1 and 8 points, he has a passer rating of 117, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. When the Raiders are behind by more than 9 points, so 9 to 16, his passer rating goes to 54%, 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So overall, when he's behind behind, he's thrown 10 touchdowns and 6 interceptions for a 96 rating. I hear a lot about Derek Carr's late comebacks and all that stuff, and I think there's some validity to that. But clearly, recently, when the Raiders are down by more than a touchdown or more, he struggles there. And I think I have a solution to all of this, by the way, in a minute, but I want to make sure Kelly and Chaz have an opportunity as well. And Mo, I agree with you. I think he's not a terrible quarterback. He's a middle-of-the-road quarterback. There's nothing wrong with that. He is what he is. If you look at his numbers over the course of his career, they haven't changed that much, right? 16, he had more touchdowns that big year. But other than that, it's pretty much the same, Kelly. It hasn't changed.
It hasn't. And like Mo said, I don't think you can win a championship with Derek Carr. I think you can be a playoff team. He said if you have a good offensive line, you have a good running game. But here's the thing. They have a really good running game. They have a good offensive line. The wide receiving core wasn't great, but still, I mean, he threw for 4,000 yards. But and I don't know if it's he doesn't want to make a big play downfield or Gruden. Like I said, we don't know which one it is.
Right.
But it's like if I need a big throw and I can choose any quarterback in the league, Derek Carr is way down that list because I know he's not going to try it, let alone make it.
Well, one of the things you didn't talk about, one point you didn't make was the defense. Yeah, the offensive line's great. All those other things. He's got the running game. We don't have the defense. The Raiders don't have the defense yet. I think you brought up last week on the show, you said 7 of the top 10 defenses are in the playoffs this season, right?
Yeah, but then the two top, well, with the exception of the Ravens, a couple of the top teams like the Chiefs have one of the worst defenses in the league.
Right.
So
7 out of 10 of the teams in top 10 defenses are in the playoffs. But then you also sent me a stat. I think it was Derek Carr teams they hold a team under 20 points. And their win percentage, Derek Carr was at the bottom of that list. He was like 19-15 winning, holding when the Raiders hold the team under 20 points. So there's that. It's like, okay, so if he does have a good defensive day, he still can't win the game. So arguments, both sides, stats, are, support both sides of the argument. It's just it's ongoing.
He was under Blake Bortles and Brock Osweiler on that list.
Wow.
I mean,
well, and Mo, here's the thing. Here, my solution to this, because I still believe that Derek Carr will be the quarterback in Las Vegas unless they get an offer, unless something changes. They could get an offer they like. They could see a guy they like, a free agent, a young guy, whatever. They could do any of that stuff because we've learned from Gruden and this organization now that you can't expect what you would usually expect. Now, to me, the solution, Mo, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is competition. I think the Raiders need to go get another quarterback. That does not mean that I'm saying that they should move on from Derek Carr. But what I am saying is that he needs to be pushed because you look at the history of the Raiders, going back to Tom Flores, who had Cotton Davidson behind him. LaMonica had Blanda, and LaMonica had Blanda and Stabler. Then Stabler had Plunkett. Plunkett had Pastorini, Wilson, on and on and on. Okay, so that philosophy of bringing a guy in to push someone to get to their best performance is something that John Gruden hasn't done, even when he was the Raiders coach and had Rich Gannon the first time. But to me, I think that's how, if you're going to keep Derek Carr, if you're going to keep him, you have to bring somebody else in to push him.
I agree with you to an extent. One thing is, and you talked about the numbers that Derek Carr is behind, and I think part of that is because Derek Carr, even though despite the game-winning drives and the fourth quarter comebacks, you have to be a little bit nervous about him in high-pressure situations. Because he has shrunk on the against Kansas City. Again, in big games, sometimes he shrinks. So if you let's say you bring in some competition for Derek Carr, and he doesn't play well, and that'll be another point that, well, maybe he's not that well when he's under pressure, and maybe you do need to think about moving on. Because if you think about it, that down the stretch against a good team in a big game, are you afraid Derek Carr is going to beat you going downfield 75, 80 yards? Are you petrified that he's gonna bring his team down and score? Little, I'd wait for all that. But again, I totally agree with you. I think the Raiders will bring in a rookie quarterback. I don't think that rookie quarterback will start. I agree with you. I'm people who follow me a while know I do the Moe's percentage. I say 80% Derek Carr is the starter next season. But I do believe at some point Gruden will draft a quarterback and he'll try to groom a quarterback. Not to say that he will start, but someone to legitimately push Derek Carr, because his biggest competition was who? Connor Cook?
Yeah.
Matt
well,
McGloin?
And Mo, here's the question I have for all you guys too, which is, And Kelly and I talked about this during one of the breaks, which is Kelly thought that bringing in somebody to compete with Carr actually will not be good for him. But at that point, you would learn that it was time to move on. At the same time, we talk about a rookie quarterback. A lot of Raider fans want the Raiders to draft a quarterback somewhere in this draft. But John Gruden has no record of developing quarterbacks, number one. So my view is then I think Gruden would probably be in favor more of going and getting maybe a veteran, and then you look at a younger quarterback to develop over time. But if it's a rookie, I don't think that pushes Carr enough, unless it's a top rookie, unless they somehow, a Justin Herbert falls to them at 12 or something, and they decide to go that direction. Not saying they will or that they should, but if a guy like that comes in, a high draft pick, then I can see them pushing Carr, and the mentality and the issue for him being, I better be on my game because this is a top rookie, versus if it's a third or fourth rounder, I don't know that that's going to do enough. Do you guys?
I'm playing armchair psychologist here. I've got nothing really to back this up, but just the way he is on Twitter, the way he is some of his press conferences, I don't think mentally if you bring in a legitimate contender, he will be able, I think that will break him and he'll be shot.
Interesting.
I honestly think he's I hate to use the word fragile because I don't, but that mentally, I just think and Trubisky's the same way. Trubisky wanted the TVs in Hallis Hall turned off because they were being too mean to him, but I don't think Derek Carr mentally is tough enough if you bring in a legitimate backup to thrive in that, to where he's going to be, kid his game up a notch. He's going to be that guy. I think you're basically eroding what you have. And if you honestly think you have a shot with Carr, you can't do that. But if you don't, you shouldn't have him there now to begin with.
Right. That's exactly the point. This was supposed to be the season where we found out, what we're going to have going forward. And he just did enough, a little bit more than he did last season. So now it's like, well, we have to give him one more season to see, is he going to be the one going forward? And next season, it'll be the same thing. He'll do a little bit more. They'll make the playoffs. They'll be in the contention, and it'll be the same question over and over.
No, it's good. Yeah, where does it end, right? And that's the point. All right, Mo, don't go anywhere. Get right back to you, man. All right, we're going to step aside for our quarter-hour break here. When we come back, we'll finish up our discussion with Moe Moton, Chaz Osborne, and Kelly Kriner about the Raiders' 2019 season. You're listening to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140.
CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Hey, this is Rodney Hudson. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
All-Pro Rodney Hudson brings us in. One of the honors this year for the Raiders, which is well-deserved. You're listening to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We are going over the season that was for the Oakland Raiders. We just finished up our discussion on the offense and on Derek Carr. Again, if you missed it, I believe he needs competition to get the best out of him, and so hopefully that's what the Raiders are able to do, either via draft or via free agency. All right, Moe Moton joins us on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line. He's part of this discussion as well. And Mo, as we close up here, before we let you go and have the rest of your Sunday to watch some playoff football, when you look at 2019 overall, clearly you almost doubled your wins if you're the Raiders, going from 4 to 7. They could have, as Chaz mentioned earlier, maybe even won one or two more realistically if they don't maybe fall down a couple times. But overall, 2019, did we come out of the season with less question marks than we went in?
I think we have less question marks, but the biggest question mark of them all is still the jury is still out.
Yep.
Because people are still going to ask, is Derek Carr the guy? And as Chad said, when we went to this season, everyone was saying, well, this is the year we're going to find out, is Derek Carr the guy? And because of Antonio Brown's debacle and the wide receiver injuries and misses, we're still asking that question. I think that's a big issue because, again, going into his 7th year, we're still asking this question. Usually when you have a franchise quarterback, you know right away. When you saw Deshaun Watson, you knew right away. When you saw Patrick Mahomes, you knew right away. Mm-hmm. Derek Carr was still like, maybe, could be. No, that's
well, and Mo,
good, but
no, go ahead. Sorry.
But if you look at the parts of the roster parts, and we talked about the draft class, I think that's the shining spot. Those are the shining spots for the season that we found out that Mayock knows what he's doing in the front office. He knows how to draft, and assuming that he stays on, the Raiders should have another pretty good draft class in 2020, and that should give you hope for the future that Derek Carr will have a great supporting cast. The only thing is you need a quarterback who can overcome obstacles. You're going to have a running back who goes down. We saw that with Josh Jacobs having a shoulder injury. You might lose your right or left tackle. Your defense may erode over the season. You need to be able to your quarterback needs to be able to overcome those obstacles in the season to win the big game. So, again, the parts are good, but the big picture still a little murky.
Yeah. Well, and to me as well, you talk about overcoming those challenges, and guys, I think that's part of the issue too with the team, right? The team has to do that. But with Derek Carr, if that's the biggest question mark, as you say, Mo, and it was maybe going into this season as well, along with the roster changeover in general, is I think you're right. You have to be able to handle the challenges differently, and I don't think getting upset about idiots on Twitter, because there are a lot of idiots on Twitter, okay, who attack Derek Carr in unfair ways on things that have nothing to do with football, okay? And then I get defending him. His brothers are out there doing all kinds of things, including making fun of Josh Allen last night, who was in the playoffs, whether you like him or not. And so that doesn't help to me because, look, I get it. I have friends in sports. I defend people too. I would defend my friends to the death and my family as well. I get that. But at a certain time, you are in a public sport, in a public eye, and you have to be able to handle the criticism as well, whether it's fair or not, as well as the glory. And I think that is part of the equation here. And we talked about it, Chaz, right on the nighttime show on Tuesday nights too, where I thought Derek Carr a lot would bring up in press conferences unasked about people on Twitter, this, and people are going to blame me, which, is a psychological tip that it was bothering him.
Yeah, you'd like to see him a little more fired up there in those press conferences instead of just talking about going home to see his family and
family's the most important thing, no doubt. But you're there to talk about football.
Talk about football. You talk about the game, your job, and then leave it at that. And Kelly brought up the point about him being sensitive, and there's just so many things. And Mo's right about him overcoming those obstacles. The one thing that Derek Carr doesn't do, he doesn't lose you games. So you've got to look at both sides of it. There's so many positives and so many negatives. It's just such a quandary. I know we're going to argue about it till we're blue in the face.
Kelly's ready.
Well, no, you said he doesn't lose you games, yet you saw that stat the other day. In the 6 years of his career, only one quarterback's lost more games, and that was his brother.
Well,
So you just said he doesn't lose you games, yet he's lost more games.
That was in teams games that They held them under 20 points.
No.
Overall
6
record.
years overall record.
Oh, that's
no
right.
one's lost more games than Carr except for his
Right.
brother, who lost one more at the Texans.
In their first
and
6
I think we
games?
could in the first 6 seasons. And I
First 6
think we can
seasons?
admit that Texans franchise was a dumpster fire
Right.
in the first 5 or 6
Right.
years. So yeah, you're saying he doesn't lose games, yet he's lost more than anyone else.
He
in
doesn't
6
lose
years.
you the games. Now I'm talking about the complete team. I'm talking about all the talent on the team.
Well,
I'm not
if
just
you
talking about one
don't
guy.
win a game, you lose a game.
Right. So why is
So
Derek
if
Carr the
he's
only
not
one with a
winning-
win-loss stat?
If he's not,
Why aren't we talking about the guys on the defense? Why don't they have a win-loss stat?
well, because if the defense plays well, he still loses.
Right. It's,
I mean,
it's a, it's
if you could, that's the thing that kills it for me. Under 20 points a game, his record is that bad.
Right, that's
so
the
if
glaring
your
stat.
if your defense plays well, you're still losing a
Right.
football game.
That's the one that matters to me because that's when you know the defense is playing well and he didn't do enough to win the game.
Yeah, and Mo, when you look at this too, so that's still the big question here, and we'll I think we'll know probably by draft date what they're going to do at quarterback, and I'm with you. I still think that Derek Carr will be the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders. In fact, I'm pretty dang sure. I think it's a good 70% chance, but there's always that 30%. But otherwise, when you look at this team, I would like to see them. I know they have the need for a wide receiver. I'd like to see them go all defense in the first round. I wanted them to do that last year, and they almost did. But when you look at this and you look at that team going into next year, Mo, how much of a focus has to be that defense to make sure that they at least get to be middle of the road, and then next year you win 2 more games, then you're in playoff contention for real.
As Kelly pointed out real quick, that stat about Derek Carr's record when the defense holds teams under 21 to 20 points. That kills a lot of people's arguments saying, well, all we need is a defense. With that said, you have to at least try to upgrade your defense. I mean, I don't remember the last time. It's hard to remember the last time the Raiders actually had a decent defense. They're always like 20th, 22nd in the league in scoring, which is a problem. And I think a lot of people looked at Gunther and they wanted to fire him. And I think that defense needed more talent before we can fully judge Gunther. You got to remember the last defensive coordinators had Khalil Mack. And they had some decent parts elsewhere. A lot of young players developed under Gunther. A lot of people are going to give Buckner credit. A lot of people are going to give the position coaches credit, but they don't give Gunther credit for some of the development of the young players. And I think he deserves some of that. Mm-hmm. So I think you add more parts at the beginning of the draft. I wouldn't mind if they went all defense, but knowing Green, they'll probably stick a wide receiver in there in the first round.
Yeah.
So, but definitely, I think Isaiah Simmons is the one guy that I would love the Raiders to draft only because of his athleticism. He would bolster the linebacker position and finally get a guy. The Raiders finally have a guy who can cover tight ends and do multiple things. Him being the jack of all trades may hurt his stock. We'll see what happens there. But I think the Raiders should absolutely draft him if he's there. I would draft him before wide receiver since the wide receiver class is so deep.
Yeah.
And then, kind of go majority defensive players for the rest of the draft.
And I agree with you, Mo. But the question, Kelly, is will Simmons be there at 12? Some of what Mo is talking about, which is his stock being hurt by this kind of jack of all trades stuff. I don't know if it's going to be hurt enough for him to fall. What do you see as far as that draft order goes?
Well, his stock gets hurt with the Raiders because of that, in my opinion, which is why I think there's 0% chance he's there at 12. I really do. I know middle linebacker isn't like a hot position, but I think Simmons is a better prospect than Bush was that went to Pittsburgh last year on that level of a Devin White. We saw how high White went. We saw what Bush did this year. But I think just because he's not that big thumping guy and listen, you can talk about Gunther's system all you want, and you say, well, he doesn't have the players, but the players he wants at linebacker don't work in the NFL anymore. So his system won't work if he keeps putting the same pieces in there. Yeah. So I think Simmons isn't the kind of guy they would look at because of that. If I'm them, I'm 100% on there. I just don't see any possible. I just don't see him falling to 12. If he does that, if he falls to 12, and then I saw a mock draft the other day, I had Jerry Jeudy falling to 12. If those two guys, either one of them fall to 12, this system's, the draft's broken.
Well, right. But I agree. I agree. You have to get that defense better. I'm not saying you have to have a top 5 defense, but if you can get middle of the road, 15 and up in defense where you're able to control the game a little more, and you can then improve your offense at the same time, which they've done a significant job of this year as far as offensive line, tight end, as well as running back, then suddenly it opens up a game in a much different way for you, Chaz, that suddenly you're in games you might not be in because your defense is at least able to keep you closer.
Yeah, and it seems like Gruden, they like these versatile players, and I don't know, get the strongest player at the strongest positions instead of trying to mix and move people around and get a versatile guy that you can play here and play there. Let's get the best guy in the best position and move forward with that. I don't know.
There's a movie I love called The Player, and Tim Robbins talks about an old motto: no stars, just talent. Just give me talent.
Right.
I don't,
That's
no
That's right.
position.
Take it over anything else. You're right. All right. That concludes our discussion on this. Hey, Mo, I want to thank you again. Amazing season. Thanks for your contribution as always. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you more in the offseason as well.
Of course, we'll be preparing for the draft, and hopefully Kelly is wrong, and Isaiah Simmons does fall.
Yeah.
And people say, well, he's a jack of all trades, so he falls. Well, let's just hope. Fingers crossed. If not, Corey Littleton is a good backup plan as a free agent pickup.
Well,
you're cutting a big check for him, though, because this free agents class is not panning out to be the greatest up top.
No.
And with so much cap money out there, somebody's cutting a big check for Littleton.
All right. Well, Kelly and Mo will have to have a small wager on that of some sort. Whether maybe it's Mo will have to eat cheesecake or no. Just kidding. Mo, thanks again, man. We'll talk to you real soon.
Thanks, Mo.
Appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks.
All right. That was Moe Moton, our senior NFL columnist at silverandblacktoday.com. Also, Bleacher Report. We're going to step aside when we come back. It's Kelly's Corner.
Yes.
And we'll see what he's got in store for all of us right after this. You're listening to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140. Here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 in Las Vegas. I'm Scott Gulbransen. Kelly Kriner, Chaz Osborne are here with me. And just a reminder, we also have a Tuesday night show. That's right, Silver and Black tonight, 6 to 7 p.m. on Tuesdays. Both shows are year-round, by the way. So when you need your Raider fix, we're your guys. We're here for you.
Yes.
And on this week's show, since we did our kind of season wrap-up here today, this week's show we're going to welcome two guests. Mario Tovar of Raider Ramble website, of course, a lot of you know. He can get his 2 cents on the Raiders 2019, Derek Carr and more. He's got some interesting perspective, so we'll have Mario on the show, as well as Ethical Skeptic. Did you guys see the story that this gentleman wrote? And he goes anonymously because he's sort of a bigwig in an industry, so he's got to kind of keep on the down low. But the Ethical Skeptic did an analysis of the Raiders' penalties over 2019, but also did them historically to look at and see if the Raiders are indeed, we know they're penalized more than anybody. Of course, that's self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're going to get penalized, a lot of that comes down to your team and talent and all kinds of things. But he did the work to say that, no, that the NFL actually is, in essence, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, doing this on purpose, and that the Raiders get more severe penalties and all this stuff. So we're going to have the Ethical Skeptic on, and he's going to walk us through his study on the Raiders and penalties, and he asserts that this isn't by accident.
No.
Which underscores every conspiracy theory every Raider fan has ever had.
Well,
but he's got data. It's very compelling.
It's true.
You know,
it goes
it's
back
compelling.
to Al Davis. Way back in the day when Al Davis is butting heads with the league, of course the league's going to turn around and say, wait a minute, buddy. Not so fast.
But Al Davis has been gone now, unfortunately, 8 years, right? So but it still continues, and how much of that. So it's going to be interesting to talk to the Ethical Skeptic. So join us Tuesday night, 6 to 7 for Silver and Black tonight. Mario Tovar and the Ethical Skeptic will be with us on the show. All right, it's that time of the show that everybody waits for. They get their coffee ready, whatever they might be eating this morning, donut, granola, whatever it might be. And, of course, I'm speaking of, and it doesn't usually cause you indigestion, but it may. You never know. Kelly can.
So they're getting their Pepto
he
ready.
He can be polarizing every once in a while. But here is Kelly's Corner.
Yeah, today's won't really bother anybody because I'm just pointing out something that I find very stupid in sports, and that's the voting on different awards. You know, they just did the All-Pro voting, and one, these things should be public to see who people voted for,
right? Because
certain people shouldn't be able to vote.
What's certain people? What do you mean?
Well, like if you're, and it's funny because you see it with a Hall of Fame in baseball every year. Like Hal Morris gets Hall of Fame votes every year. No offense to Hal Morris or his family, but you should not get a Hall of Fame vote. Somebody in the All-Pro voting this year voted Terrell Edmunds an All-Pro. I would bet money that they meant to vote Tremaine Edmunds and just put the vote in wrong, because Terrell Edmunds might be the 4th best safety on Pittsburgh, let alone the league.
Yeah.
You know, so you see just dumb stuff like this all the time. I think those votes should be made public. But the one that really hammers this home this year is Pepsi. You know, Pepsi every year does the Rookie of the Year, you know, the Pepsi NFL Rookie of the Year. You know, this year the finalists, and they got a good class of finalists. You know, Nick Bosa, A.J. Brown, Josh Jacobs, Kyler Murray, Miles Sanders. 5 really good rookies. They actually do a Rookie of the Week as well. So each week they pick a new rookie. So for 17 weeks they pick a rookie. One person had multiple votes in that, and he won it 7 times this year.
So he won 7 Rookie of the Week honors from Pepsi Cola.
From Pepsi out of 17 weeks.
And who was that?
It was Gardner Minshew, who is not one of the 5 finalists for Rookie of the Year. You win half of the Rookie of the Weeks by your own voting, and you don't have him in as Rookie of the Year, as an option for Rookie of the Year.
But then aren't you basically saying if you're Pepsi, the public is stupid and we're just going to kind of make some decisions for you? Is that what they're saying? Because if it's the public vote, it's a public vote, or it's partially public, right?
Yeah. It's like on their Facebook page. It's the whole viral
they let the public
marketing and
think that they're voting.
Yeah.
So, 7 out of 17 times a guy wins this. He's not one of the 5 finalists.
Wow.
That's just stupid.
21 touchdowns as a rookie.
I don't care about his numbers. You won Rookie of the Week 7 out of 17 times.
But you're not a
No
finalist.
one else won it twice. Every other week. And Max Crosby won one. Ed Oliver won one. Jacobs won one. So, I mean, it was spread around 7 out of 17, and you're not a finalist in the top 5.
But is this any different, Chaz, than like everything else in life going back to when we were high school, who was homecoming king and who got instead most spirited like I did?
Scott was a face painter in high school.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I could see that.
Back before it was in vogue, I did some crazy stuff.
No, you know what? When you bring that up, it makes me think of like the All-Star voting.
Taco Fall is like 6th in voting.
No, I love Taco Fall, and I know Alex Caruso on the Lakers is up there as well, and it's a skewed thing. And I know once the internet was created, and all of a sudden these people started you get the internet vote, and that just went out of control. And now you've got guys, you're voting for your mom's grandma because the name is familiar. Like, those kind of voting it gets a little out of control. Like,
and these things matter when it comes to contract time for the players.
Absolutely.
If you're voted an All-Pro, that's something for your agent to go back to get more money. If you're an All-Star, I mean, these actually matter for the players and the agents. And then you got dumb crap like Terrell Edmonds getting All-Pro. And you've got guys that'll get All-Pro in 2 positions when they play 30 snaps at one position.
Right.
You got a guy like Frank Clark who was voted an All-Pro. He was a Pro Bowler.
Mm-hmm.
Or wait, no, All-Pro. It was All-Pro. He had a bad year. Like, for his standards, it was a bad year. But name recognition, he's on a winning team.
Right. I think Jalen Ramsey, too. I don't know if he had the best season either, but there he is. He's in the Pro Bowl. You just see it every year. Now, I love when they bring it Taco Fall. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But like you said, it does have ramifications. And when you're putting somebody in that position, now wait a second, there's somebody that's really deserving of that spot.
To quote Homer Simpson, taco. No, but and that's the thing. I think you're right about this, Kelly. And with fan bases and everything and players who have great years, can you ever really be equitable with most of it? Because the parameters, when you're talking about journalists voting, and that's sort of how it's always been, when you're talking about journalists voting, making their votes public, there are some that do that, and I appreciate it because it gives you at least some insight into their thinking, which then you can look at it and say, okay, well, yeah, I either agree with your point of view and why you voted the way you did, or I didn't. But a lot of folks, they want the anonymous nature of it, and I can't understand that.
Right.
Yeah, it comes back to the old argument about there are certain voters that will not vote somebody in the Hall of Fame their first time because Babe Ruth wasn't a unanimous Hall of Famer or something like that.
Stupid.
Now, I understand the guy, I can't remember what sports writer it was, but he didn't vote for King Griffey Jr. because he said, I know King Griffey Jr. is getting in. Mm-hmm. I'm using this vote on, say, like a Tim Raines or somebody that's close.
Yeah.
Because, I understand that to a point. I get that. But like I said, you see Hal Morris gets that, votes like that. People like that, and it's another thing. It's like you see it a lot with the AP poll, college football. These coaches aren't watching football games.
No. You know who does those votes, by the way?
The SID.
SID.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I was at UNLV, our SID did it there.
Yeah, and
the coach never took a look at it once.
If the coach isn't watching Mississippi play football if they're not playing Mississippi,
right?
The coach isn't watching Utah if they're not playing Utah.
Right.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, it's just stupid.
No, and that's the thing with the voting. I agree with it being public. And then you see voting like for the Hall of Fame. I think it's the same thing because, again, I've seen all these stories about the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the increased class, and not one of them has mentioned that Cliff Branch should be in the Hall of Fame, even though he's got better numbers than Lynn Swann and all this kind of stuff. So I don't understand. You just want thinking, right? You just want to understand. Just like I think referees should be available for press conferences after games to talk about their calls so that at least if they make a bad call, you can understand what was going through their head and what their logic was. And it still might be wrong, but at least you can say, okay, well, I understand how he got there, even though it's still wrong. I mean, you get insight into what their decision-making process is, and with these votes, you never get that opportunity. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, okay, that was Kelly's Corner, of course. Not brought to you by Pepsi Cola.
That's what I say, not an advertisement.
Sponsored by
we clearly have to be
Pepsi, the stupid voters of the football poll.
We clearly have to be a Coke shop now. All right, we're going to step aside before we come back for our final segment of the show. We're going to pick the NFL playoff games today, as well as fill you in on what's coming up on Tuesdays, Silver and Black Tonight. You're listening to the Silver and Black today, here on CBS Sports Radio. 1140, I can't keep track.
A new coach.
Sports Radio 1140.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Welcome back to CBS Sports Radio 1140 and the Silver and Black Today. Playoffs week 1 underway yesterday. 2 more games today. It was fun last night. Not a lot of fun as far as a lot of offense, but the endings of the games were a blast, so that was fun. Even though Raider fans, of course, don't get to watch their team in the playoffs. NFL playoffs, guys, still to me, I mean, it's just so much fun. The pressure, everything else just ramps up, and I love the time of the year. Other than the fact that it means football's almost done.
Playoffs.
Playoffs? Mora.
Talking about playoffs?
I love the intensity. You're right. It's just watching the game. Each play is just like so important. The intensity level just ratchets up.
Except for yesterday when both games were terrible.
Terrible. But the endings were great.
Cool. I sat through 3 hours to watch 4 minutes of good football.
Come on.
And I had money on both games.
Look at the sunny side of the street.
I had money on both games. I didn't even care at one point.
You're like, just get this over.
Yeah.
I don't care if I lose or win. Just get it over with.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, by the way, when you guys look at the playoffs, I mean, we'll get through the playoff rounds, but now with who's left, when you look at this, who do you think? I mean, everyone wants to pick Baltimore. right? Because they've been on such a run.
Yep. They're the best team in football.
They're the best team in football. Do they win the Super Bowl though, Kelly?
I've got a futures bet on the Chiefs, so I'm saying the Chiefs win it. But no, to me, Baltimore's the favorite. And in the NFC, I keep going back and forth between the 49ers and the Saints. I said at the beginning of the year the Saints were going to win the Super Bowl because I just thought this was their last year after what happened to them last year, chip on their shoulder. I mean,
they changed the rule for them.
Yeah, they changed that rule, and it finally worked for them last week. It's the first time it's actually went for them. But just that Baltimore offense is just so hard to prepare for.
Yeah.
Now next year when everybody's got a year and a summer to go over tape and everything, they're going to have to put in a new wrinkle.
Yeah.
But when you only got 2 weeks to do it.
So you think they'll beat Kansas City in Kansas City despite your bet?
Yeah.
You do?
It's in Baltimore.
No, it'll be.
Baltimore. Sorry,
it'll be in Baltimore.
In Baltimore. So, Chaz, what about you? You think the champion's coming from the AFC side, the NFC?
Always AFC.
Nobody's talking.
Always cheering for the AFC.
You don't like the 49ers. You don't think the 49ers have a shot?
Not rooting for the 49ers.
No, not rooting. I'm asking you who has a shot.
Yeah, they definitely have a shot.
Rooting for.
I'm a defensive guy, so they've got top defense. Of course, they've got a shot at it. But watching Deshaun Watson yesterday, and he's breaking the pocket and running a little bit, not even close to Jackson's speed getting around there.
They're gonna lose by 1,000 in that game.
Yeah, so man, when you see Lamar Jackson and I got lucky and I put a little bet on Lamar Jackson to win the MVP at the beginning of the season. So I'm obviously kind of biased here. I'm rooting for him.
What odds did you get that at?
50-1.
50-1.
I threw away the ticket because Kelly told me that Russell Wilson was going to be the MVP, but I dug through the trash and found it.
Well, he had a shot. Then Lamar Jackson just ran away with it.
I was going to say, yeah, Russell Wilson, if you take him away from Seattle, they're a one-win team.
Absolutely. Incredible. All right, so let's get into today's picks, and we'll start, because he's always so well prepared, we'll start with Kelly.
Well, I can do this easy. I've got the Saints. Like I said, I think they make
Did you get it at 7.5 or 8?
I got it at 7.
7, wow.
Yeah.
I thought I got a nice little bump at 7.5. I bet it too early.
Well, no, there were 7s out when it opened.
Was there?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other game, man, I don't think I've ever cared less about an NFL playoff game than I do Seattle and Philly.
I know. I'm
taking Seattle. It's at a pick 'em right now. Sure. You know what I'm not going to do today? Watch Seattle and Philly.
Yeah.
I'm going to go home. I'm going to take a nap.
Especially on a windy day. I don't see a lot of offense in that game other than I think it'll go under. That's not one of my picks, but I think it'll go under.
Name 2 running backs in this game, and Marshawn Lynch doesn't count.
Ah, man.
No, seriously.
Miles Sanders.
He's not. They said he may not be.
He
playing.
might not play.
Yeah.
Wow.
I haven't seen the inactive
list. That's a huge
list.
loss.
I'm sure they're going to just shoot him up, and he's going to play because they have no one else. But he's going to be 80%. You've basically got Boston Scott and whoever the Seattle team brought in this week.
Right.
Okay, so you have the Saints and
Seahawks.
And the Seahawks.
That's such a tough game. Seahawks have looked bad going down the stretch. Philly's won 4 out of 5, but it's been against the Giants and the Redskins in their own division.
It's their division.
Man, what a clunker of a game.
The NFC least is who you want to play at the end of the.
Yeah, but I will tell you real quick, Chaz, before you give your picks, I will tell you that Carson Wentz is not getting enough credit for what he's been able to. I know it's a bad division, like you said. There's no doubt. He's had no wide receivers. He has no running back except Miles Sanders, who's basically his top receiver, and so he's done well for what he has. Now, playoff game today. It's his first playoff game, so we'll see how it goes.
But 8 can win that division. That's.
The best quarterback on Philadelphia is playing wide receiver. Greg Ward out of Houston.
Oh, come on. All right,
I'll
Chaz,
just go with the home teams. I'll take Philly, and that one's such a toss-up. But you're right. It's just Carson Wentz not getting enough credit. They've won 3-4 out of 5, whatever it is, and they're at home. And Seattle's kind of been on the decline. They lost a few. That Arizona game looked pretty bad, and losing their running backs. I'm cheering for beast mode, obviously. So that's a tough one. I'll go with the home games, the home teams there.
So
Philly
Saints and Eagles.
Saints. Yep.
Okay. I'm there too. I have the Saints. I got it at 7.5. Damn. And then the Seahawks was a pick 'em, and I'm taking them as well. I think they'll inch it out. Again, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, but I think overall that despite being depleted at running back, I think Seattle is going to show up and beat Philly on the road. Big win for them.
Yeah, Russell Wilson scrambled a lot. He'll make some plays with his legs.
He will.
Yep.
He will. All right, so we look at the rest of the playoffs, of course, and what's coming down the line, and we talked about some of the teams we like. The NFL season, too, is coming to an end, and we'll devote time to it next time, but I think we do need to talk about the officiating. We saw yesterday, even in the playoff games, some big mistakes on a kickoff in the Houston game that they initially ruled as a touchdown as a fumble. I just think the NFL's got a big issue here. It's not declining, or the TV numbers aren't declining. It's not hurting the sport from a viewership standpoint, but from a competitive standpoint and from a frustration, I think, of fans, it is starting to take hold, and I think that it's something they're going to have to deal with in the offseason.
But that's why they don't have an issue. Because it's not
because it doesn't hurt the pocketbook, right?
And that's the whole thing. If it's not hurting the pocketbook, they'll do whatever they can to placate people and everything. But until viewership goes down, until people stop consuming this product, they don't care. It's like, wait, okay, you can complain all you want. We're still getting all your money. Sweet.
Yeah, no, that's it's true though, and that the NFL, don't let anybody fool you. It comes down to money.
Yep.
And
it's not just the NFL; it's every business.
Sure,
every business just comes down to money.
It's profit driven.
Yeah,
even though they get to be classified as a nonprofit, which is ridiculous.
Well, no, the NBA is a nonprofit.
I know.
No, the NBA and NFL are nonprofits. Every team's a profit generator.
Correct.
So it's an umbrella corp. So I've had this argument 1,000 times with people, and maybe it's like I have a little bit of a business background and stuff in school. I have no problem with them being a nonprofit. Because every other one's a revenue generator, so that's where you're getting hit with.
You get new tax money.
Yeah.
From. Yeah. No, I get that. That's fair. All right, guys. Well, it's over,
man.
Right? But we have
best of season ever.
We have much more to talk about. Which, of course, again, join us Tuesday night on the Silver and Black Tonight here on CBS Sports Radio, 6 to 7 p.m. Mario Tovar from Raider Ramble will join us, as well as the Ethical Skeptic. He is the guy who wrote the study about the Raiders' penalties, not only for 2019, but how the Raiders might be targeted by the NFL with these penalties. Chaz, have a good week, man. Thanks for being here.
Yep. Good
Kelly,
to see you, fellas.
As always, thank you.
No problem.
All right. For Kelly and for Chaz and for everyone here, including our crack engineer, DJ Max Trent Ogle, we appreciate everything, and we appreciate you guys. What a great season. Thanks for your support. We roll on. We go every week, all throughout the year here on the Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio. Everybody take care.